In 1095, a single speech, given in a field in France, would go on to ignite a conflict that literally reshaped the world. Now, on the surface, it might seem like it came out of nowhere, but the truth is, the forces behind it had been building for centuries. This is History and Society, where we break down how power and belief systems shape human history. So I want you to picture the scene. It's November 1095, the Council of Clermont. Pope Urban II gives this incredibly fiery sermon, and the massive crowd just erupts. They respond with this single, thunderous chant, Deus vult, God wills it. And that became the rallying cry for the entire First Crusade. And that really brings us to the central question, doesn't it? I mean, Jerusalem had been under Muslim rule for over 400 years, so why now? Why this moment? The answer isn't a single event. It's about the convergence of three massive, deep historical forces that created a kind of powder keg, just waiting for a spark. Okay, so the first of these forces was the absolutely dramatic rise of Western Europe, what we call Latin Christendom. You see, for centuries, it had been this poor, fractured society pretty much just fighting for its own survival. But by the late 11th century, it had transformed into a confident, aggressive power ready to expand. To really get this shift, you've got to look back a bit. After Charlemagne's empire just kind of collapsed, the West was under constant attack. You had invasions from Vikings, Magyars, and Arabs, and this pressure forged a new, hardened elite class of knights, guys whose entire existence, their whole society, revolved around warfare. This warrior class, well, they would become the engine of the Crusades. But then, by the 11th century, the tide was turning. The invaders were finally defeated, or in some cases absorbed into Christendom, and Europe began to push back hard. The conquests of the great city of Toledo in 1085, and then the wealthy island of Sicily by 1091. These weren't just random victories, oh no. They were a clear signal that the West was now on the offensive. And, this massive shift didn't go unnoticed. The Muslim historian Ibn al-Athir, who was writing at the time, he saw these conquests in Spain and Sicily as a sign of a new, way more aggressive West. His perspective is absolutely crucial because it shows us that even outsiders recognize these weren't isolated events. This was the start of a major new offensive. Alright, so that's force number one, a newly powerful West. The second force was the rise of a powerful and, really importantly, a centralized church. The papacy in Rome developed this bold new vision to unify and direct the immense military might of Christendom under its own single authority. So, during the 11th century, this thing called the Gregorian Reform completely transformed the church. It went from being this loose collection of bishoprics into a powerful, centralized authority. For the very first time, the Pope in Rome could issue commands, organize massive projects, and really articulate a unified vision for all of Western society. And that right there was the key to mobilizing the army of an entire continent. With all this newfound power, the papacy developed this, frankly brilliant multi-step strategy. It worked to channel the violent, restless energy of Europe's warrior nobles outwards, away from each other, and towards external enemies. They sanctified this kind of warfare, and they offered the ultimate incentive, spiritual rewards. Suddenly, fighting in a church-sanctioned war wasn't just a feudal obligation, it was a holy act. Okay, so we have a West with the power to expand, and we have a church with the ideology to direct it. The third and final force was the trigger, a crisis on Christendom's eastern frontier, where the great Byzantine Empire, the center of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, was on the very verge of collapse. The year that changed everything was 1071. It was a date that sent shockwaves from Constantinople all the way across the entire Christian world. At the Battle of Manzikert, the Byzantine emperor wasn't just defeated, he was captured by the Seljuk Turks. This was a devastating, humiliating blow that effectively broke the back of the Byzantine army. It threw the gates of the empire's heartland wide open to invasion. And the scale of this loss? It was just immense. Before 1071, Asia Minor was the Byzantine Empire's core. It was its main source of soldiers, of food, of wealth. After Manzikert, it was nearly all gone. This incredible geopolitical pressure is what forced the new emperor, Alexios I Komnenos, to send a desperate appeal to the Pope in the West for military aid. And so, in 1095, these three immense historical currents finally converged. You had a powerful West looking for a fight, an ambitious church looking for a cause, and a collapsing East creating a dangerous power vacuum. All it needed was a catalyst. And that catalyst was Pope Urban II. He saw a historic opportunity in that Byzantine appeal for help. At Clermont, he masterfully wove all of these threads together. He framed the expedition as both an active aid to fellow Christians and as a holy war to reclaim Jerusalem, speaking directly to the feudal duties and the spiritual hopes of every knight in that audience. So think about it. Urban used the Byzantine crisis as the immediate pressure. He deployed the Church's powerful new ideology of holy war as the unifying belief, and he unleashed the restless military power of the West Knights as his weapon. It was the perfect alignment of pressure, belief, and power. It was the perfect storm. So, when you look at it this way, the First Crusade starts to look less like a sudden, spontaneous religious revival and more like the inevitable culmination of these deep, interlocking historical forces. The call to arms in 1095, that was the spark, for sure. But the fuel had been accumulating for generations. The slow transformation of Western Europe, the strategic ambition of this reformed papacy, and that sudden power vacuum in the East, together they created a geopolitical storm that was, by then, ready to break. And that leaves us with a final thought. The core drivers we've explored here, a rising power that's seeking new frontiers, a potent ideology that can mobilize the masses, and an external crisis that acts as a trigger. These things aren't unique to the 11th century, which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do these same hidden forces continue to operate and to shape the conflicts that we see all around us in the world today?